I feel like a princess. Do I look like one?
You truly wish to know what I think you look like?
On your left! Oh, Gregory!
Is our dear sister still not ready?
Oh, she's only been readying herself the entire night.
You mean her entire...
So we'll start here. One of the first things we notice when watching the show, and we'll explain how this is going to work a little bit. We will freeze frame, point some things out, and then we have comparables actually from the Met's online open access archive. So here we have this lovely, appears to be Chinese vase. That there's a pair of these vases in the scene. We'll get another shot of those in a minute, but really quite nice.
High life.
I shall run upstairs and hasten her along.
No, Colin, wait. I'll do it.
So here we get another shot of a main room pair of vases for the Bridgerton household. Quite ritzy. This one is in the Amari style. My gut says that it is also Chinese, but this one could be Chinese or Japanese. It is very much a nice 18th century shape.
Likes me much better than you, Benedict.
Did you say that?
Everyone says that.
Oh. Daphne!
And here's that establishing shot. You see behind this worker we have the Amari style vase. We've got the pair of vases up top and the kolhad down here. So looking at similar shape Japanese vase from the time period, we've got great Ido decoration on top and actually kind of a Chinese scene on bottom, which isn't too out of the ordinary for Japanese pieces of the time. And here I picked this one out. The backside actually has Chinese Immortals on it, so I'm not sure that this would be in a house like this, but the shape is very 18th century, and you will see versions of this in the show. And lastly, not quite the coloring of the Chinese vase we see in the background, but very much a strong 18th century or strong piece that would be an 18th century household. This might actually be a Kangxi piece, but very nice. And lastly, I did want to pull in the kolhad, not have it all be Chinese and Japanese porcelain for this scene, because there are things in here that are outside of porcelain and pottery. I'm not doing any of the furniture here in this episode, but all of these things come together to really make the scene. So here we've got some things that we'll see a lot in the Bridgerton household. Fondness for sweets, fondness for the chocolate set. There's a lot of things about the Bridgerton style that's very, it feels very homely to us in the 21st century. So, we'll pull here some of the tableware that Eloise is around. So here we've got, it's probably about 120 years before the show takes place, but this is a London silver chocolate pot. I think we see one actually quite like this a little bit later in the show. And I don't remember exactly what scene, but very likely to have been one of these London households at the time. And then I actually have pulled one that's a little bit earlier in style, but we do see one very much like this, I think, in the Featherington household in the first episode, if my memory serves correctly. But you see it's much more ornate, it's worked quite differently, you don't have the clean lines. And lastly, here's an item we see a lot of in a lot of different stylizations, which is footed salver or footed tray, a lot of different things that you could call this. I've seen people call it a taza. Like there's so many different things that you could call this type of ware.
Anthony, I did not expect to see you here this morning.
So a lot of things in the Bridgerton main room. Mostly we're going to focus on the mantle. I did just notice the barometer in the hall for the first time. So it's a lot of stuff you see every time you watch this. But Now we're going to look at some French Sevres style porcelain. Uh, I'm not certain that this is what we have in the Mantle in the Bridgerton household. There's a lot of different continental porcelains in the Bridgerton household. There's certainly some Meissen. I think there's certainly some Sevres at some point in the show, very popular, coming out of the 18th century, and it would be still hanging around some of these households. So here we have two very lovely pastel colors with miniatures. And really nice is actually getting to look at the Featherington style. Though it's kind of funny to look at them from the 21st century, I think these folks would have been considered very ritzy in their style, and there's a couple reasons why here. So, looking at this giant cabinet we have, there's a lot of things that you'd want to look at. It does seem, we have a lot of continental influence here. One of the main things is, you see multiple different places in the household. There are these French sphinxes that would have been very popular in the late 18th century. So when the Featheringtons were, when the Lord and Lady were a bit younger. So, we could consider perhaps at one time they were very fashionable. And, here's a French sculpted red stone Ormolu piece that you'd very likely find in this sort of household. Probably not in these green rooms, but maybe somewhere in the study or even inside the large case.
Cool.
Then we have the Featherington mantle, and they're very nice, looks like bronze cast lions on there. I found a good comparison for that. We also have a fire shield. There are more sphinxes in this shot that are kind of concealed. And here we have the lion comp, that is a bronze cast, I believe late 16th century, which I mean, these sort of casts were very much in style for a long time. And here we have a Meissen figurine. It's actually a lioness. I think would be very much in style in the Featherington household. So I added this in because I was actually struggling to find a good lion, and then as I was about finished with the project, I did find one. So but I decided to keep in the Meissen lioness. Really nice figurine from the mid 18th century that would have held a place in a house like this. And here we've got, this is the last piece. I couldn't quite find the right bust clock in the Met collection for the Featherington household, so I used this one, and it's actually kind of funny to this is actually a French clock with George Washington on top, which, of course, though the Featheringtons do have some French sensibilities, they would never be, uh, never in 1813, a year after the start of the War of 1812, would a English baron be caught dead with George Washington clock on his mantle. Well, that's it for the first episode, folks. Thanks so much for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe. Huge shout out to the Met for making all of these high quality images available for open access. Shout out to my wife for encouraging me to do this. And shout out to my grandmother, who is the one who taught me antiques in the first place.